Well, Hambini called out AbsoluteBLACK on the way that they measured their losses on their new derailleur and how they claimed that it's like so many watts better and efficient than other brands. And he went into the fact that he doesn't believe that they had the resolution or the sensitivity to measure those small differences. So let's roll an intro and let's have a bit of a deeper dive into why Hambini believes this and why he put that out there. Now, when we want to measure something, there's two key factors that we need to consider. Now, first of all, the resolution. Now, if we have something that only measures in integers of kilos, 1 kilo, 2 kilo, 3 kilo, 4 kilo, and may go up to 1,000 kilograms, that would be good for measuring something that's like on a pallet that may have arrived at a hardware store. It's got some product on it and it weighs, say, 500 kilos. And that scale would be appropriate for measuring that pallet with that load on it. But if I wanted to measure something in grams, then my resolution, or what I can see on my scale, is only 1 kilogram. That's the smallest measurement I can detect. So I can't measure the difference between 400 grams, 800 grams, 600 grams, or whatever. I haven't got enough resolution on the display to be able to measure in the gram scale. Second, we have sensitivity, or your ability to measure. Now, that can be broken down into two things. Now, the first thing is basically the sensitivity of the device. So what you'll find is in most type of devices that have some sort of pressure or load or even measure as far as a meter or whatever, generally at the lower end, it has the biggest error. The error is not usually linear. And this is why when manufacturers give a specification, which is a plus or minus, it just means that that instrument is going to measure within those parameters. It's not really an error or a correction that they give you to get the true error or the true correction. And the other part of your ability to measure is your controls or the condition you're working in. You may have things like the temperature affects it. Like, just say I was going to use a laser to measure 10 kilometers across a bay. Now, I might actually pick to do that measurement either very early in the morning or in the very late in the evening, because the sunlight may actually affect the wavelength of the laser that I'm using. I may get an incorrect measure. Now, it depends what accuracy I'm after. If I wanted to measure down to centimeters and I'm measuring kilometers, I may need to control the amount of light on the day to make that measurement. So that's why I would pick early in the morning or early in the evening. So that is a control that you would do to ensure that your results are within what you expect to get or what you're trying to measure. Now, to demonstrate this, I'm going to use some kitchen scales and use a rim brake caliper, the actual locking nut that holds it on, and the washer, and put them on, put them off, put them on with different items, and see if I can get repeatability and how much the scales can detect when I change the weight of them. Now, I'm just going to put that on now so you can actually see the different variations in the readings. Now, as you can see, when I put the washer on, sometimes the scales detects it and we get a 1 gram increase. And then sometimes when we put the washer on or take it off, we don't get a change in 1 gram, depending on what we take off, the retaining nut or the washer or whatever. So if we wanted to measure, our aim was to measure the variance or the difference in weight of the washer, the repeatability would be very poor. So the results would be pretty unreliable. And my test rig, which is in my kitchen, on my bench with those scales, is really the repeatability is not very good for carrying out that test. And that is exactly what Hambini's saying here. He's saying the transducers they're using and what they're trying to measure is really quite small. So the error or the sensitivity of the equipment is not good enough to be able to get that repeatability or that accuracy to really confirm that those results are reliable. And when he put on his graph the variance of error, he shows you the actual reading and then the variance of error which sits above and below, then you can see that that is actually quite large. And he's taken that from the manufacturer's specifications of the device. Now, what Absolute Black could have done is sent those instruments away to their national measurements laboratory in the country, which has traceable measurements, and they could have got that piece of equipment calibrated. Now, when you are measuring things like that and you go into claim specific variances, very, very small variance, that's what I would have do. And I would have also looked at the controls and variance, and you do tests at different temperatures, even the belts, different belts, different tension of the belts, the bracket that Hambini talked about, how it's supposed to be rigid or flexible, that could have affected the results. So all those things, even though they may only be small variations, because we're measuring a very small difference, could be significant and you could get a false reading. So this is what Hambini is trying to point out. And really, it's quite amazing. I see this in the bicycle industry quite a lot. They like to claim very small changes because in the bicycle industry, let's face it, we're talking about an engine, which is us, which puts out pretty small amounts of energy. And we've got air drag that really is quite small because the speeds are relatively low, and bicycle manufacturers are trying to sell us that this bike's more aero, this piece of chain, whatever, is more efficient, whatever's better on these bikes. Tires have lower rolling resistance, but the amount they're trying to measure is very, very small. And what really gets me is they don't go through the appropriate international recognized systems to get these results. And I've actually worked in this industry, and you can't claim figures like that with any authority unless you've gone through the proper international standards process. And that's where you actually get a piece of equipment and you actually send it off to an international standards and you get it calibrated against them, so you actually know the real errors of this device compared to international standards. And then you also need to do modeling on your test setup, because whatever you've used in your test setup could actually have an effect on the way that that piece of instrument works. You might have longer leads, shorter leads. It could be 5 degrees that day. It could be 40 degrees that day. The belt tension might vary it. The bracket that holds the transducer could vary it. And what you need to do is you need to do some tests to make sure that changing something on your test rig doesn't change your results, and what you're getting is really a false result. Well, anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. I hope that kind of clarifies a little bit about accuracy and what Hambini was talking about, and a bit more focused on just why he believes that transducer and the equipment they were using really isn't a sufficient test rig to measure those small variances.